Welcome to Off the Shelf. We are here again, and I have some of my great friends with me tonight, and we are going to be talking about a wonderful book tonight, and we are so excited. I am Renee Ryan, and I am the author of over 30 books, 30 published novels, including my latest, which is, I always do this because it's my show, I can. The Widows of Champagne is my latest. It's a World War II historical fiction. And I have lots more coming out in the next year or two. And then I also have my co-host, Barb. Tell us a little bit about you.
I should have brought my books down. I'm Barb Wallace. I'm an award-winning author of romance and mystery novels, and I've recently pivoted to historical fiction.
All right. And we have a wonderful guest of honor. Her name is Emily York. She is the one, the only, the incomparable book distiller. And she's a wife, a mother, an RN, a registered nurse, and obviously a distiller of books. And she highlights all her favorite books on social media. As you say, life is too short to read bad books. Amen, sister. I am so with you. And we can all, you can follow Emily on Instagram at The Books Distiller. And we will put that up on Step Into the Story after we're done. I'll make sure that people have that link. So Emily, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. And I think we actually met because I reviewed The Widows of Champagne and loved that book. So it was fantastic. So I'm going to give a plug. Renee did not ask me to do that, but here you go.
Thank you.
So I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, and I met my husband in college there. And then we moved right outside of Charlotte to the suburbs of South Carolina about 8 years ago. I have 2 children, and I don't think I've told either one of y'all this, but I am now teaching at my children's classical school. So I teach 2nd grade there and have loved it. So all the classical literature. It makes me so
Total
happy.
career pivot. Love it.
Yes.
I'm a former high school teacher, so I love that. That was my big career. I was a high school teacher, and then I was also an executive for a cosmetic company. So I had a very, very strange background to write before writing. Now, let me ask you this, Emily. Did you go to Auburn University?
I did, War Eagle.
So
I met my husband there, and ironically, our author went there as well. Patty went to Auburn, and she was in nursing school. So she and I have connected some online just because we both love Auburn. So, and she actually lives in my hometown now. So not that I've like stalked her, but we have several circles that kind of know each other. So
that's so funny. My twin sister went to Auburn. I have a twin. She went to Auburn. I went to Florida State. We're from the South as well. And she was a swimmer. So she was their full ride scholarship swimmer, big swimming family. I'm from.
Big Olympic swimmers from there. Yes.
So were you in a sorority or were you?
I was in a sorority. Yes. I did do Greek life and nursing school and all the things. So.
And my daughter went to Kentucky, University of Kentucky, and she's an RN. So she's a BSN RN. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I love it. Lots of small kind of fun things that were all coinciding. So yeah, I had to admit that I was watching you. I was like, oh, I'm going to go see where she went to school. And that's so cool. So I love that Patty
went to sitting here in my corner since, let the 2 Southerners go.
Yeah, you're a Yankee.
I went to school in Boston, 200 years of it, but roll tide. Sorry.
Boo! It's always a good day when Alabama loses. That's all I'm going to say.
No, Auburn kicked their butt a couple weeks ago, so I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I can't brag too much.
So let's get started in our discussion and what we're going to be talking about today. And we're going to deep dive into this book. And I think we all agreed it was just amazing. Patty Callahan wrote this amazing book. It's called Once Upon a Wardrobe.
Look at us all.
Ooh, look at us. Woo.
But the cover's so pretty.
One thing that we do here at Off the Shelf is that we don't usually invite the author here is because we really want to just have a super honest conversation about a story and a book. And Barb and I bring the author's perspective. And I think, Barb, you're also a bookseller, so she comes in from the bookseller as well. And then we always invite a book influencer like Emily, who comes in from a reader's perspective. And so we really like to kind of dissect the story from all these different angles. And sometimes we feel like when the author is here, we tend to be a little too gushy and not as honest as we can. Although I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot more gushing here because this book was so amazing. And unlike our last week where Barb and I, what was it, City of Girls by Elizabeth?
Oh yeah, we had a lot of disagreements.
Yes, but this one I think we had a lot of agreement. But we also, one of the things we like to do is we start from the outside in. So let's talk about this cover. And Barb, I want to get your, let's get Emily's idea, kind of as a reader, what you thought. And then Barb, when it's your turn, I want to talk about as a bookseller, what you thought.
Okay.
So I am a huge mood reader, and I just was in a wintry mood. And so when Renee said, would you like to read a book and let's do it wintertime? This is the first book that came to mind. The cover, I think, is beautiful. You actually don't even notice. I know we have a lot of women with their backs on books.
Oh my God, there's a woman.
You don't really notice it though. I notice the snow and you notice the college. And so, yeah, you don't really notice that as much as the lamppost here, which is very Narnia-esque, and then all the snow. So I personally loved it.
I do too. I'm looking at it now and like actually seeing more details than I ever paid attention to because I'm drawn to that lamppost the whole time.
Yes. Yes.
And it's funny because I was actually in a different Barnes. I work part-time at Barnes & Noble, but I was at a different Barnes & Noble. So she was in a different place today. She was actually on the new fiction bookshelves. And this cover just jumps out. It's in the same place as all the historical fictions. And it just jumps out in comparison to all the muted grays. And it just calls to you because it was so bright and wintry and Christmassy. And they even said, have some, it's a winter read. They were selling it as kind of a seasonal read too. But it's so, I do love it. And it's always been drawn to the light in the building. And I didn't even notice there's a little lion at the bottom. And I'm so observant, but it does really stand out. And it's on the table that we have it on. It's with, again, right now there seems to be a lot of trend towards grays and very muted wintry colors. So I think that the blue really did her a favor because it really stands out.
Well, and I noticed the red.
Which is on the same shelf. She's got a book out on the same shelf that is much, again, in muted colors. This one just leaps at you.
Yeah. Well, and I thought the red to me jumped out, and I did notice the girl because the woman with her back to us, because it was red, and I immediately thought Christmas, and it's a Christmas. It really is, and this is one of those things. How fortunate that we're talking about it this week. Yeah, I would put it in the category of a Christmas book, and yet it's surprising that it's a Christmas book because it's when you're reading it, you're not thinking Christmas, but Christmas plays such a huge role in the story. And I thought they did a great job of kind of giving that little pop of color to kind of draw you in, even if you didn't even notice it at first. And I know there's all kinds of psychology behind. I know, like when I was first building my first website, they were saying that readers tend to look at, and this is backwards. So, okay, they go across and then down. So putting that there was really smart in terms of your eye. So your eye almost always it comes across and then down. So right there is where you're looking. So that was really smart on their part. So, okay. So did you have a sense that this was what kind of story did you think it was going to be other than did you think it was going to be more of a fantasy, a YA, an adult women's fiction? What did you think when you saw the book?
Well, I'll say this. Have you read her prior book, Becoming Mrs. Lewis?
I have.
I have not, but now I want to.
Well, and that's where I was kind of first introduced to her. And I didn't know how that would play into this book. But I assumed it would be something along the same lines. And she did get the character Joy did get a mention in the book.
She did.
But I actually did not know what to expect. I'll read anything by Patty Callahan these days because I just truly love her as an author. And so I didn't know what to expect other than I knew it was a winter read based on the cover. And I knew it was about C.S. Lewis, whom I greatly admire. So I was sold. Well, and the rest was a surprise.
You both read Becoming Mrs. Lewis. So I have a question for you because I thought that this had the tone of this book was very fairy tale-ish. There was a very magical, almost, like I said, otherworldly kind of voice to it. Is that her voice, or was that a really smart craft move? Is her other book, the voice, different?
I'll let Emily. What did you think, Emily?
Well, you know, I immediately jumped to, she's written some great summer reads that are more, that are not fairy tale-ish at all. And so, I mean, that just from a reader perspective, I think it's kind of a standalone what she's done here, and it's beautifully and brilliantly done. Becoming Mrs. Lewis has similar vibes to this because it is the letters back and forth between C.S. Lewis and Joy, but yeah, it's a whole different.
I thought, and I don't know if it's because George has a point of view. I felt more fairy tale. I felt like this really does have a magical feel to it that felt almost like a departure, and you could still tell it's her voice. And, but yeah, that's kind of how I felt.
And as a writer, I was thinking that I think she did it deliberately, you know, and which is brilliant because of the subject matter. When you're in George's head, it did feel like you were going off into his dreamland.
So let's go ahead and dig in. Right. I mean, we're kind of talking about her writing style and her voice. And and it took me a few minutes when I was going back. Whenever I do this, I try to kind of just read the story as a reader, and then I go back and read it as a writer. And I noticed that she has 3 different types of point of view, depending on if we were in George's point of view, it's 3rd person present tense. When we are in Meg's point of view, it's 1st person present tense. And then when we're in, when she's retelling the story, which technically is Jack's point of view, so C.S. Lewis's point of view, it's third person past, I think. Yeah, 3rd person past. And a lot of times that can be jarring as a reader. And I didn't notice the switch at all. Like, I did not have that moment where I was like, oh no. But it also gave each character a whole different voice. So I kind of went along with it. What did y'all think of that?
I'll pass it to Emily for a minute because she's the reader.
Well, I actually didn't even notice until you asked that because it was so smoothly done. And I will say she does go back and forth in the past and the present as she's going back into Jack and his brother's past. But I thought it was very smoothly done because I tend to get very distracted if it's like a choppy timeline and we're jumping back and forth and you can feel the jump. I don't enjoy that as a reader. And I know I'm just gushing about this. I just think it was so smoothly done and so well done that she almost makes it look effortless. And I'm sure it was not effortless. I'm sure there was a lot of work that went into that. But I enjoyed it. And I noticed it especially at the end. And not to spoil, I don't want to spoil anything, but when Meg is older and she is reflecting upon the past and then Patrick brings her back to the present, it was so well done that it was very, very, very seamless. I know I keep saying the same thing, but
I think seamless is the perfect word. And I think the way she did it with it, we're not spoiling it, but it starts with, she's telling the story to George. So George is listening, and then she makes it clear that we're going into George's fantasy. George is imagining what he's imagining how she's telling it. And because she does it that way, that it flows from one transition. The transition is very easy because you hear, she basically says, George settled back and let the picture start building in his mind, kind of. And then you're suddenly in a different tense and in a different point of view. But that's why it was so seamless. I think she set everything up perfectly.
Yeah, I think as a writer coming in, the one thing that Barb and I will do as writers is we study brilliantly written books like this one to figure out why it works, how well it's done, what she's doing. We try to me studying a book like this as an author, by this book specifically, is like taking an MFA class, a Master's in Fine Arts class in how to write a really fabulous book. And I feel like sometimes if you just kind of start to dissect it, and one of the things that you're kind of taught when you're a newbie writer is that when you change point of views, and if you try, you know, like they have to be done smoothly, there's certain ways to do it. Like you're either handing it off, like you literally hand off the point of view by like what you were talking about, how when George settles in, but it's done so well that I had to go, oh, wait. Oh, we're in George's point of view. Oh, yeah. And I had to study that as an author versus as a reader. I mean, I blew through it the first time because of that. And yet there was a lyrical sense to her writing that took it above, like such a notch above. And let's see, I kind of, let's see, where was it? Oh, shoot. Okay, we have to back up here. Yeah, this is so funny. So let's talk about the actual story. Okay, so Once Upon a Wardrobe, not very long ago.
Never far away.
Very far away, yes.
A brilliant author by the name of Patty Callahan put together a book called Once Upon a Wardrobe. Okay, so we did that. You know, it's live broadcasting. We're allowed to mess up. Okay. Anyway, so I have.
Well, we should tell people briefly. The book is this. It is a story of how C.S. Lewis's life and how he came to create Narnia, as told by a character Meg to her baby brother.
Yes, Meg is our heroine
about C.S. Lewis's life.
Yeah. So Megs is the heroine of this book, and Megs is the heroine, and her little brother George has congenital heart disease, and he's not long for the world. And it's when I started reading it, I was like, this is going to be so depressing, and it wasn't. That again, in the hands of Patty, it was brilliantly done. I was expecting just to be sobbing, although I did. It was done in a way that but anyway, so George is set right after World War II. So it's past the war, and it's right after C.S. Lewis has just published The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And George, he can't get out of bed. He spends his life in the bed, and he's a reader. And this book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, has just captured him. And he wants to know where the story came from. And so Megs, coincidentally, is going to school at Oxford, in a different college where C.S. Lewis is they called him a tutor. So he's a professor teaching in Oxford. And so she boldly figures out a way to meet him and ask him, because George just wants to know where Narnia came from. And I loved how, and I believe that this is because I've read everything that C.S. Lewis has ever written. I am a huge fan of C.S. Lewis. I'm just going to get that out there right now. And I loved how Patty portrayed him as somebody who wouldn't answer that question. He guided her to the answer. And so the story is about how C.S. Lewis is bringing Megs and George to understand where Narnia started. Would that be a good summary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you like that? How did you like how she set that up? Were you frustrated that C.S. Lewis, and his name, he went by Jack, just didn't tell her where Narnia came from?
I was frustrated. No, I did get a little bit frustrated because I was worried that George would not last until he found his answer. That was, as a mother who also has an 8-year-old daughter, George is 8 in the book, so that he just really resonated. And I read him through the mother's perspective. That was my worry. And yet I was like, surely Patty is not going to do that to her readers and not end the story so quickly. I thought it created an element of magic that it was not answered directly, and that it would reroute back to World War I and back to World War II and give you glimpses of that all pertain to the story and how it came about. So,
and I loved as a story. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Barb.
As a writer, I thought it was brilliant, and I loved it because we've done a bunch of historical biographies lately. This was such a unique way to approach it. It was not linear with, this is C.S. Lewis' childhood going all the way through. I mean, we did see all of it, but she gave it in short glimpses. We got just enough of every scene to feel the emotion of it. And she told us his life story without making the whole book his life story. I mean, it was really a story as opposed to historical biography. And I loved that because I learned a lot, and they all came to life to me. But as a writer, I really appreciated that she came up with a different way to frame it and a different way to do it.
Yeah. And that he was a sickly child like George, and, you know, that connection, you know. And I'll tell you, Emily, as an author, one of the questions, it's almost always the first question you get asked as an author. No, I would say it is the first question that you're asked. How do you get your stories? Where do your stories come from? And I don't know any author that can actually answer that question. I can never answer that question. I can kind of give you sort of this weird, you know, like if there's a straight line to get to, you know, an idea, it really does come to us this way. It's not a straight line to get to the story. And it's all these different pieces that then suddenly you've got the story. And even when you're writing the story, every decision you make could have been one of 10,000 decisions. And one of the hardest things as an author is to say, okay, I'm going to make this decision, and then you have to go with it. Then I'm going to make this decision, and then you have to go with it. And I thought Patty was kind of giving the reader an insight into what it is to be a writer through Jack, because I don't think he could have answered that question. And I think that was why he didn't answer it. And why he sort of said, well, you know, maybe Edmund was this character from my past. And, you know, obviously we all know who the lion is from The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, but he never really, and Patty didn't beat you over the head over who that lion is. And he sort of let the reader, which is how the whole point of the writing the allegory of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and what the lion who the lion stands for. And I thought that was a brilliant way of Patty also sort of giving a reader the insight into, we really can't answer that question. And I think that was so honest.
But I think he did answer it in a way, because he does, I can't remember if it was Jack or George that says it's bits and pieces of the tapestry of someone's life.
Is a story.
They can't tell you what, you know, oh, this professor became this character. But like all of us, when we write a book, little pieces of things are floating in. And I think that's what she was showing by illustrating the key points of his life that showed up in the book, in Narnia, but weren't necessarily because he purposely said, I'm going to make Narnia do this. I also thought it was interesting that the lion played such a big role in George's life and all his art.
How the lion kept showing up, and then what George says at the end of his story, of his point of view, and he says, "Well, the lion is always with us." I just was, I was just like, yes. I was like, I know, little George, and what did you think of the relationship between? And we'll start with Emily. The relationship between Megs and George. The sibling relationship, because there's a considerable amount of age difference. What did you think of that?
I thought it was absolutely precious. And I was actually glad that the parents said, we think that you need to be back at university with your friends. You're coming home too much. And she had a great line and just was like, no, I need to be here with my brother. She realized the gravity of a situation. I thought it was a precious relationship. And I thought it was precious that we got to watch her grow and learn and mature while she was telling the story to George. And George almost became like a big brother. Yeah. You know, he was almost the mature one. And so it was like, I don't like to see Megs cry. I do think Patty gave us enough of a glimpse of her, Meg's inner soul to realize that the struggle and the wrestle as she was reasoning between, I think she specifically said it was between imagination and reason and logic. And I just loved that paradigm. And then she relayed to George exactly what Jack had told her and didn't try to put logic around it, just presented it. And George took up that imagination piece. So all that to say, I thought it was a precious relationship.
Yeah. I loved how George, in his point of view, you know, like when he was in his head, oh, poor Meg, she just doesn't get it. And I thought that was so sweet. And it's a reminder of, we can all use that reminder of tapping into that childlike brain and that childlike faith and that childlike belief and understanding of story. And was it in this book somewhere where the younger that you are, you're still connected to what came before, and there's that memory, and as we start to get older, we lose it, and logic starts to take over, and George was still so close to that, and he never really lost it. And I just thought, there was just so many brilliant things that were said in this book, you know, about story and life. Yep.
I also thought it was interesting that the love interest, Padraig, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry.
Padraig, yeah.
I had to Google it. It's Padraig.
Padraig? Okay, thank you. But he mirrors George in many ways. He's an adult George, which makes a lot of sense that that's who she would fall in love with. You know, not that it, you know, he all the qualities she loved about her brother, this guy had. And
well, so, and how frustrated he'd get with her because she just wanted the answer. She wanted the beauty of, you know, the math problem. And it also makes sense because she couldn't fix George. Well, I know I can fix a math problem. There's one answer. That's it. You use the formula, you get the one answer, and having to go through this process, it was almost like C.S. Lewis, you know, Jack taught her, C.S. Lewis taught her, Patrick taught her, and George taught her, because really she's the main character, is that stories is logical. It is bigger than that. And it has a beauty to it and a connection to it that maybe you can't solve in an equation, but it's still there. And I love that her process, like you said, Emily, I love that she finally got there, because by the time she's talking to her grandchildren, you get that she finally figured it all out. And that was beautiful. And then let's see, I was going to even read, he says, I think Mr. Lewis, she calls him Mr. Lewis, says, when the story is finished, he has forgotten a good deal of what writing it was like. And I don't know, did that resonate with you, Barb, as a writer?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I bet you Patty was like, yeah, because you like, once you're done, you forget how hard it was while you were doing it. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I wrote this book. And then you sit down to write the next one and you're like, oh, wait, it was, you know, for some reason in your head, it became like childbirth. I mean, Emily,
I was going to say childbirth.
After you had the first child, you totally forgot what it was like to have that baby. The physical, actual birth part, until you were in there for the second child, I'm guessing. And then you're like, oh, right. It does suck for a little bit.
Well, and I'll admit that I pray before every day I sit at my computer, at the keyboard, and then I'll get the end of the day and I'll say, well, I don't know where that came from. Oh, wait, I know where that came from. So I do try and tap into the lion, if you will. But yeah, but when you're done, you don't remember a lot of it. And I think it is like childbirth. That's why you have more than one child, most of us, because we forgot. And then you're in the middle of it going, ooh, I forgot how hard that was. So what was I thinking? So yeah. Okay, so let's keep moving on.
Who was your favorite character in the whole thing, Emily?
Yeah. So George came to mind first. But as I read the book again last night, and I think Patrick was a close second, although
Tim,
you did say Patrick was the adult George, so maybe that's why I enjoyed it. But I really resonated with George and just his childlike innocence and wonder.
He was, and I did love Patrick. He was just, I don't know.
Cute.
I would meet someone like that. He was adorable.
Adorable. What about y'all?
What did you, who was your favorite, Barb?
Oh, same thing. I think I loved George. I think you're supposed to love George. I liked Meg, but I loved George, and I really thought Patrick was adorable. Like when, he just, everyone would like to date someone like that. He just challenged her at every, he accepted that she loved her brother, that the brother came first, that this was important, but he also treated her as a very intelligent woman and wanted to have real discussions with her. He would debate her, like, oh, okay, go find out that story. Oh, you silly girl liking math. I mean, he recognized that she was an intelligent woman and they had an equal relationship. I liked it. I liked him a lot.
And during that time period, 1950s, that was not necessarily the way that you saw men and women interacting like that back then. I would say Meg's was my favorite. And I think it's because she really struggled and she had a lot of growth. And, of course, we're in her head the most. But I think I would have to say she was my favorite because, of course, I love George and I did love Patrick. But I kept thinking with Meg's, oh, she's going to get it. She's going to see the beauty of it's like music and science, how they're so interrelated, and storytelling, and just how it's all interconnected. And it's who we are as humans. You can't have one without the other. And I knew she was going to figure it out. And I knew she kind of already had it figured out. She was just fighting it. And just her love for her brother just was so sweet. And that just, I would like to think that my kids like each other that way, be like that. And I don't, and I know that, and I'm one of 5. And I would like to think that if one of my brothers I'm the baby, so it would have been the opposite. But I just love that sibling relationship and even her relationship with her mother and her father. So I would say she was my favorite for sure. Yeah.
Well, and I will say this, I never thought that I could have like a favorite setting, but do you not want to have a cup of tea and see us and Warren's little nook room? Yeah. What do they call it? Little Lee is their cottage?
Oh yeah, Warney. I mean, I have to say Warney was my second.
I liked him.
Really liked him.
The fact that he had to fight 2 wars really kind of, I was like, oh, that poor man.
I know.
I still imagine going through World War I and then being drafted a second time. And
yes, they were babies. They were babies in the first, and then the second one was only 20 years later.
But no one knows what you're going into.
He's still smiling and welcoming college students and offers them a cup of tea or a glass of whiskey, and is like, it's such a cozy little atmosphere. So anyways.
It was the perfect little English cottage. I didn't want to, we'll go there together.
Yes, let's do it.
We'll go.
I would say setting, that's the thing too, is that setting can either just be sprinkled in as almost like an afterthought, but setting in this book, I mean, Oxford was so important, and the different colleges. And I knew Oxford had a bunch of different colleges. Like I knew it wasn't one university, but I felt like I was actually walking through the streets there. And so I feel like, I think that was another character in this book. And that's when I love when authors do that, when they make the setting another character. And even the castle, when they went to the castle.
The castle was that whole scene was perfect.
Yeah. And by the way, for our viewers, if you have not read this book, you're missing out, because it's just, we could talk all night about it. So, you need to go back and read it and then watch us again, and you'll understand a lot of what we're talking about, because we're trying to be a little careful not to tell too much of the story.
We're trying to get people to read along before us. So we're going to push that a little bit more. Yeah.
That's our goal.
There is a scene where George gets to see a castle that was part of the inspiration for Narnia. And it's a beautifully written scene where George is getting the adventure of a lifetime.
And we can
George's point of view, and he knows how special this moment is.
And Patrick made it happen.
I dare you not to cry. I dare you not to cry during it. I was sniffling through the whole thing.
Yep. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. So because The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe plays the Narnia books, really the first one, played such a huge role in this book, I have to ask you, have you read Narnia books?
I've read them all. Yep.
I have too. You haven't read them, Barb?
No, I'm ashamed to say I have not.
I can't. Okay, you have to read at least The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's magical. And so, Emily, what did you think? Do you have a favorite of the series?
Probably Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And interesting, I feel like scholars say start with that one, even though The Magician's Nephew is first.
Right.
I can't quite remember why, but I have listened to them with my kids, and we have that up next for our listen aloud as we drive to school. But I'm with you. I've read a lot of C.S. Lewis's books and have really enjoyed his works. So Barb, you got to read Narnia.
You know what? I will put it as a listen on the way to when we go. We got a long drive for Christmas. I'll put it down for that. I actually did buy some of his nonfiction books as a Christmas present for my husband.
So, and what's so interesting is his nonfiction are scholarly books. Like they're
right up my husband's alleys, which is why I bought them.
Completely different from Narnia.
And this book inspired me to buy them. So
good. Because
to sell her books and C.S. Lewis.
It's deep thinking. I don't know. And my husband and I, due to his job, have moved around a lot in our marriage, and we've gone to different churches. And I don't know a single man of God, a preacher, that will stand at a pulpit that has not read C.S. Lewis and would not put him up on one of their top shelves in terms of one of C.S. Lewis's books changed their faith, their thinking, how they think of God, how they think of the Trinity, and C.S. Lewis was an atheist, and that's what's so fabulous about when you read his books. You understand, like he's coming at it from a whole different ballpark. He's not coming at it as to be a little bit irreverent. He's not a Kool-Aid drinker. He doesn't come at Christianity as a Kool-Aid drinker. And I think he even said at one point that his other friends were really frustrated with him and his atheism, and that they walked around the lake. Remember that scene where they walked around the lake and walked all night long until he finally realized that there was only one myth that's true. And it was just a really interesting, I wonder if that is how he came to understanding, because I do know it was through Tolkien and the other, I can't remember the other one. The guy that wrote The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings was his best buddy, wasn't he? They were in that group together.
The Inklings.
Yep. The Inklings. Yep. But I highly recommend his C.S. Lewis's work. And so Emily, what's your favorite of the nonfiction books?
Well, okay, so I will say I have on my list to read his space trilogy. Have you read those yet, Renee?
No.
Okay, I haven't either, but I heard they're great. I read most recently Surprised by Joy, which is his semi-memoir. Mm-hmm. And he really describes at length his boarding school and what it was like to grow up in Ireland and how magical it was at home and how awful boarding school was. So I had that on my mind as I was reading this book, because Patty does go into some detail of the horrors and the atrocities that were happening at his boarding school, and just what a lonely, awful place it was to grow up as a young boy. And so, but I thought Surprised by Joy was great because he shows in his memoir how he grows even in the midst of those hard times.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
So, and he had a very wonderful relationship with his brother.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They were, as children, it just seemed very special too.
Mm-hmm. Very similar to Meg's and George.
Yeah.
So I liked how she mirrored that, how Patty mirrored that. I would say The Great Divorce is my favorite, but the Screw Tape Letters is so well done. It was so eye-opening for me. And I want to say, so to be fair, my master's degree is in religious studies. So at Florida State. So I study, it's a university degree, so it's not like a theology degree. But the Screw Tape Letters was like my first introduction to C.S. Lewis. And I would say it's just very eye-opening in terms of like thinking of just warfare and things like that, spiritual warfare in a whole different way. And so that would be probably the one that if I would tell people, okay, if you want to start with a nonfiction, start with Screw Tape Letters. And then, because I don't know, Barb, have you heard of Screw Tape Letters? Do you know?
I actually, the one I bought was Mere Christianity, but I was debating between that one and the Screw Tape Letters.
Yeah, the Mere Christianity, I would say, is his most, he's most famous one.
Well, it's the one that I thought would most appeal to my husband. I can keep saying this because it's his Christmas present, but he doesn't listen to this. So I
think knowing you, Screw Tape Letters would be a good first one for you, and then go to Mere Christianity.
I am going to switch back though, because as we're talking about all this, one thing that we forgot to mention about this book, because I'm going to give another plug for it. C.S. Lewis's stepson endorsed this book.
Mm-hmm.
At the very end of the book, there is a letter from C.S. Lewis's stepson telling how well she portrayed his stepfather. So, I mean, I know we're gushing about C.S. Lewis, but I'm going to go back to gush about Patty for just a minute, because when we were talking about all his writings and things, I think that's very rare for a fiction writer to get that kind of endorsement from family. Usually, like, I'm thinking about, there's a World War II book where the family is very, I don't want to name the name, but the family is very upset with how the people were portrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in Europe. They've spoken out about how this was not my mother. I don't know why you wanted to tell my grandmother was like this, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very unusual for families to say, oh no, you can see the research and the love and the care that she's put into these two books, and the way she did my mother and Becoming Mrs. Lewis and this one. So I think that that's another plug for why people should read this book, because it's an historical biography that the family actually approves of.
Yeah. And if you love the Narnia books, it's a classic. It's a no miss. I mean, I don't care who you are, man, woman, child, you know, if you're a Narnia fan, this is definitely, it's like the companion. It's the Narnia companion. So I would highly recommend it.
And even if you're not a Narnia fan, I think it's just, if you like beautiful, heartwarming stories that will maybe tug at your heartstrings, kind of raise your hand if you got a little teary-eyed at the end.
Raise your hand if you wept at the end.
Yeah, she's did a masterful job, because it was not, you know some sad things are going to happen, but she didn't really overplay it. It just happened. And actually, it was not the sad parts that made me sob. It was that George's happiest moment. That's when the way she did it, I was sobbing, because she really captured how special it was for him. So yeah, hats off to Patty Callahan. This is masterful book.
And you know, she's brilliant with she can turn a phrase like the best of them. She is definitely, there's a reason why her name is very large on top, because she's definitely a master storyteller. And and I'm not going to say very popular, sold, you know, millions of books, and has written probably 300 books. I was listening to one of her audiobooks today, and I was like, wow, this is not Patty Callahan caliber. So that's all I'm going to say. Okay. So overall impressions, Emily, what did you think? Just give me do you have a good overall, what would you say?
I believe this is the bow on top of my reading for this year. It was like truly a magical book. It's very rare that I will like gush about a book, and it's very rare that a book will make me cry. And I cried both readings of this. Loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, I don't normally cry at books. I did cry at this one. I loved it. It was, overall, I felt like I was in a different world, like when I was reading it. Like almost like I went through the wardrobe. Now, if I had to pick a second book by Patty, this is my question for Emily. Do I want to read Becoming Mrs. Lewis, if I want to ignore my to-be-read pile back here? If I want to read Becoming Mrs. Lewis, or do I want to read Surviving Savannah?
I haven't read Surviving Savannah yet. I have it on my list, and I have not read it yet. So here's what I would do. I would read Narnia first.
Okay.
And then back up and go. So give yourself a little bit of a break, and then go back because Becoming Mrs. Lewis is completely different.
Okay. Which is a mark of a really good writer, that she can do that. So more gushing about Patty, but
she it seems like the one thing that makes her such a brilliant author is that she modifies her voice and her style to what the book deserves and the story needs, versus she's just writing another book, if that makes sense. And that's I don't know many people that can do that. Brilliant. She's brilliant. So all right. So we all cried. We all had a great one. So now we're going to do a little speed round. Thank you again, Emily, for being here. So before we sign off, again, you know, one last plug for Patty's book, Once Upon a Wardrobe. We highly recommend 5+ stars. Yep. So yeah, there we go. And then also, okay. So bumper sticker for your life. I love this question. And so I sent it early. Did you think about it?
I did, but I think I went too deep on this.
No, I want to hear it.
Yay, she's one of us.
It's the first thing that came to mind, but it's because it's been my mantra through like ever since I heard it in college, that unmet expectations lead to resentment. So every time I'm resentful, I realize it's because I had expectations and that person doesn't know I had expectations. That has been my mantra in all of life. And I say it probably every other day to someone. So
that's a good one.
That is a good one.
That's a good, I like that.
A little deep there.
Well, that's because I gave you some pretty silly ones when I put in mine. So
no, I liked them.
I like them.
All right, Barb.
All right. Well, my all-time favorite true bumper sticker is actually a real bumper sticker where it said, "Before you judge a man, walk a mile in his shoes, because then he'll be far away and you'll be far away and he'll be barefoot." So I've always loved that one. But I think it used to be "The empty kettle whistles the loudest." And I've since begun this revision on that, which would be, "Don't be afraid to shine." So
I like it.
And then the golden rule. That's my other bumper sticker.
Yeah. So the ones that I shared with you, I'll just share the first one is what other people think about you isn't any of your business.
I like that one too.
Yeah. So I really like that one. And I like, don't believe everything you think. I love that because you know how we can tell ourselves so many lies. And I really like that one. And then always a lesson, never a failure. You know, it's not that you get thrown down or you fall down, it's whether or not you get back up. You know, so those are mine. Okay, so one last question because I think we have time. You meet your 16-year-old self and you have 3 words to say to your 16-year-old self. What are they?
Am I starting?
Oh yeah, we're staring at you.
Okay, well, no pun intended with the 16-year-old. And it's I think it's like 5 words. Stay in your own lane. Mind your own business. Just stay in your own lane.
That's a good one. Mine was take more chances.
Oh, that's good.
It's a perpetually good girl. Take more chances.
Mine was finish the PhD.
That's good.
There you go.
So mine was not, mine wasn't quite as lofty as y'all's. Mine was actually more practical. So, okay. So thank you again, Emily, for joining us. And Emily, again, to remind our viewers that you are the book distiller and that we can follow her on Instagram at the book distiller, one word. And she is a Auburn War Eagle graduate, which I find amazing, as is Patty. So I love that connection. And we would love to have you back. So next year.
Oh, thank you. I would love it. Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Especially
so when you have
a full day, so we appreciate you coming in.
Thank you so much. This is so fun. Loved it.
So great. So next week, Barb and I are going to be inviting Donna Allward back with us. And Donna is how many books has she written? 8,720?
Something like that. Yeah. Literally, I think it's 70 something.
Yeah, I think so. Donna is quite the prolific author. And we're going to be doing our holiday celebration and we're going to talk Christmas books and Christmas movies. And we're just going to have a good time. And we're not going to highlight any one book. We may do a little love it or hate it holiday movies because there's some that are very polarizing. So that'll be kind of a fun little conversation.
There might be some brandied eggnog involved. And
could be, day drinking because it's 1 o'clock Eastern time. So there could be at least Barb likes her day drinking. No, I'm kidding.
That's not the lie.
So again, thank you. And you guys see you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.